Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Saga. Dave Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. Hannah, how are we tonight?
We are great, and how are we?
We are fantastic. We are continuing our discussion on all the stories beyond the Skywalker saga, and this one is directly part of the Skywalker saga in a sense, because it involves Luke Skywalker. And that is this year's novel, Shadow of the Sith, by Adam Christopher. And if you're watching this, it is a thick book. But we both listened to this book, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this book has drawn a lot of discussion over the last few months when it has come out. I had to avoid a little bit of the discussion because I didn't want to get spoiled or anything. So, because I did listen to it a little later. And after I had read it or listened to it, we had talked about it. And then I went back and kind of started reading some of the things that people were saying. And it's to say it's controversial is kind of an understatement.
Probably the understatement of the year.
Yeah, there's a lot of hard feelings about this book and a lot of strong feelings about this book. So we'll get into some of that. Obviously, on this show, we're not going to spoil the story if you haven't seen Inside the Forest that we did a couple weeks ago, where Hannah and I, we pretty much deep dive into the whole story about it, because again, this is a very impactful story to the saga, we feel like. So we'll get into a little bit of that, but overall, Hannah, as we always do, overall thoughts of the book.
All right. Well, I'm going to take it a little, this is kind of going into what we'll talk about later, but I would take a step beyond impactful. This is crucial. This is crucial to the Skywalker saga. And, we can get into more of the controversy of what's going on, but who doesn't want to, I now want to have a Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian buddy cop film. I mean,
yeah.
If there was one book I would recommend to do the audio version of, and to do it via Audible or, whatever app you want, it's this book. Mm-hmm. Because I firmly believe this should have been episode 7.
Right.
We get the whole story. We get the background story of Rey with her parents. We get to know more about her parents. We get to learn more about Exegol and what Palpatine was doing there. We get to learn more about Ochi, who was hunting down Rey's parents. We learn more about Lando and his hunt for his daughter. We learn about Luke, the start of the Jedi Academy that he was trying to do. We learn more about the Sith, and we learn more about the dark side of the Force, which is frankly quite terrifying. I don't know what more you want from this, and I just want to take Star Wars Disney by the throat and just go, why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, yeah, and, I think the big discussion, I think the big reveal out there, to be honest, is that this story, I believe, had to have come out after episode 9 came out.
There's no way it could have come out before. I'm sorry. But for a story that was shoehorned to make sense, personally, it's in my top 3 Star Wars novels.
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
It is.
You never would have guessed that this was them going, how do we make this trilogy that doesn't originally make sense? Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you watch The Rise of Skywalker, and I was actually watching it was on the other night on TNT, and I had it on, and I was kind of watching a little bit of it again. And, especially those scenes where Kylo is
explaining to Rey, what happened to her parents. And you get those flashbacks. We see Ochi of Bestoon and we see her parents. And again, seeing that on screen again, it's like, I totally get what's going on in that scene. Like, you have no idea from the movie how much actually involved those characters were, and what happened years before that. Now, we're not spoiling anything by saying that this book takes place. I believe which I got to think about which way it goes. It's 17 years. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 17 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
So it's only it's about 13 years before The Force Awakens.
Yes.
So that's where this book takes place. And like you said, Lando has been searching for his lost daughter, and then Luke is in the middle of Ben's 16 and he is at the academy. Laura Santeca, makes an appearance in this book as well. You again get some background of him and the Children of the Force, and then of course the acolytes of the Beyond. I mean, there's so much that's explained in this book that when you walk out of Rise of Skywalker, you're like, what was that about? Who was that, and where'd that come from? And now, if you had this book before that, you'd understand. But I get it. I get that. Well, I don't actually. If you read this book, or if you made this episode 7, obviously the Rey's, like, who are Rey's parents storyline obviously is not there.
Well, I
don't think it has to be there, but
I think you could include it, and I don't think this is a spoiler. Like, if you didn't know, you could take out the fact that he was a failed clone of Palpatine. You could honestly just cut to a scene of a boy running through this dark, stormy place, trying to escape something, and then getting on a ship.
Yeah.
So I don't think you necessarily have to take those parts out, but you can take out the fact that he was a failed clone of Palpatine. So I don't necessarily think you have to take all of it out, but a little of it out, and it would still leave the mystery.
Yeah. And kind of reveal it later. But see, that's the thing, is in Rise of Skywalker, there is no mention of a failed clone. Like, you don't know. Isn't. So when I walked out of the Rise of Skywalker, I had assumed that was his actual son, and Rey was his actual granddaughter. Because in this sense, it kind of eliminates that, in a sense, that she's not his actual granddaughter. Like, it's only basically an inherited granddaughter, because he is not her father, Dathan, which, we get the names of her parents in here, Dathan and Miramir. And Dathan is, like you said, he is a failed genetic clone that happened to be still a successful human.
Yes.
Right? So he's a clone. He's what they call it, a strand cast, right? Like a failed strand cast or something like that.
Something like that.
Like he is a clone, but he's not the exact clone. But he comes from Palpatine's DNA. So in a sense, it's kind of like his son. That's kind of how they justified it.
Right.
I'm not overly thrilled about that, to be honest. I'd almost feel better if he actually had a son.
Really?
Yes. I would have rather had, because that would have been, to me, that's more of a true bloodline. Like Kylo, like Ben, was a true bloodline of Luke Skywalker or Anakin. I just felt like it would have been cooler. Like the dyad would have made more sense to me. than a daughter of a clone, in a sense. I don't know. That's
Well, the dyad itself, like, it just makes no sense.
well,
in my opinion.
yeah, that was
Because
kind of a way
dyad,
to, yeah.
I feel like the dyad was based off of the relationship that Jason and
Jaina.
Jaina had, because it made sense because they were actually twins.
Yes.
Which is why I thought for the longest time they're going to reveal that Kylo and Rey are at the least siblings.
Yes, I thought that too. I kind of thought that too. Yeah.
Anyway, it's funny because we have talked about that before recording this, where you said, I thought that he was a biological son. Well, I left saying, oh, he could have been a clone because in the beginning we saw all the clones of Snoke. So what's to leave you to believe that he didn't try to clone himself? But I mean, that brings up the point that there was no precise definition of granddaughter or son, and it did leave a lot of questions out there. And I think that, but as great as this book is, it does bring up the ultimate question of, should books and comics and games and whatever other media be created to help fill in the blanks
Right.
of movies and timelines? And
Yeah,
I think you and I agree that shouldn't be the case.
Well, I think that we can have, I know that it's now called Legends, but before, when it was called the Expanded Universe, which I guess they're kind of saying these are expanded universe stories now, in a sense. The new expanded universe, right? The canon expanded universe. Yeah. In that term alone, expanded universe, it means the universe that but with additional stories that are in the same universe, right? Mm-hmm. So, yes, part of me feels like that the comics, the books, the games, they're unique stories and characters that have no direct impact on what we see, what the majority of fans see, which is what that get their Star Wars, which is mainly just on the television screen or on the computer with Disney Plus. So live action, but you can throw in the animated series and stuff in there. I think that's pretty known to be canon and impactful, But then comes a book like this, and it is directly impactful to the movies, especially The Rise of Skywalker. So this I think is setting a new precedent. Because I can't think of another book that's this impactful. I mean, even like a book like Bloodline or Leia, Princess of Alderaan, or Master and Apprentice. When you have books about Leia, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, stuff like that, I mean, there's stories about that particular character in that particular time. But it's not really something you need or have to know to understand what happens with them in a movie. I mean, you have to know this story if you want to make sense of The Rise of Skywalker, I think.
Oh, no, you do. Like, I don't even think it's a matter of thinking or anything like that. And if somebody out there disagrees with me, well, I'd love to hear why you do. But you need to, like, and I think that's why Star Wars is getting so frustrating for me now, is that it feels like it's homework. You have to read X, Y, and Z to understand ABC.
Yeah.
But this is a great book. So this is like, definitely read it, because you'll understand how the sequel trilogy plays into everything. And it's also a great read. But at the same time, it's like, ugh, really? We got to do this to understand what's going on? I don't know. It's this weird...
Yeah.
It's this weird Marvel effect going on.
This felt like, yes, and this felt like we need to put this out to explain what we did in the movie. That's what that feels like.
Yes.
And to me, no other book has felt like that.
No. I mean, even the Star Wars series between, A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Do you need it? Not necessarily. Is it fun and entertaining at points? Sure.
Yeah.
But you don't need it.
Yes.
This is something you need.
Yes. Yeah. Like yeah, like you said, that's a perfect example, because like it's cool to know what Luke, Leia, Han experienced in that time between A New Hope and Empire, but it doesn't impact anything that happens in the movies. There's no lingering question in those movies that gets answered in that comic series. There's so many lingering questions after The Rise of Skywalker. This book answers all of those questions. And not only that, but it even brings in, to me, I mean, it brings in, the Sith in a different way. And there's so much more about the Sith in this book that really goes beyond anything we've ever gotten anywhere else, I think.
It makes the dark side of the Force so much more terrifying than we could ever imagine.
True. Yeah. I think we get a little bit of a taste of it also in the Vader comics with his castle, and there's a couple Sith artifacts and stuff like that show up in the comics. So there's that in a sense, but this is something else. This is something else, and it I don't want to spoil too much, but it's this person on the cover, right? So, I mean, that alone right there is pretty impactful. Like, I mean,
and this isn't a spoiler; it's a helpful hint. It's not Snoke. It may look like Snoke, but it is not Snoke.
Yeah, from a distance, I remember thinking it might have been Snoke, but I can clearly see.
Too. I was like, Snoke is in this book, and he has a lightsaber.
Yes, it's clearly a little different, but but the fact that Luke came across this person, it's like that's pretty important information.
Mm-hmm. It makes you go, can we just have like a trilogy or like what would be great? Like a not mockumentary series in the sense of it's funny, but like a fake documentary series about the Sith.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Without spoiling it, it's just this is super important. And I think a lot of people are experiencing it. I think that they're hearing about it. I think they're understanding that there's important information in there regarding Rey and Luke and Leia, or not Leia, Lando. And it feels like this is one of the books that most people are reading, like a lot of people are reading. So, I mean, I think I do actually want to. I haven't sat down and watched The Rise of Skywalker from front to back since I've read this book. I kind of want to do that because I feel like I just will feel like it's going to be a whole different experience. Have you watched it yet?
I haven't, but that'll be.
It's a whole different experience, especially when we eventually get to it. When we do a commentary on it, it's like. Again, you can reference scenes in that movie and be like, okay, I understand now the backstory and what that means. And, oh man, and going back real quick, going back to, Dathan and the clone, like if you would have, again, so in the movie, when Kylo's telling Rey, you're his granddaughter, I believe at that point we had already seen the parents in the flashback, right? Because Kylo explains that the Palpatine had him killed when they're fighting in, he's on Kijimi and she's in his throne room and they're fighting. that's when you see the flashbacks of the parents, because he's telling her Palpatine had him killed, and he's like, do you know why? And I'll tell you why. That's when he's like, that's when he shows up in the hangar and then tells her she's the granddaughter. So see, this is where I think that they failed in not explaining that he's a clone, because they showed what he looks like, and he doesn't look like Palpatine. So when he says you're his granddaughter, to me, it's like, okay, well, those are her parents. He doesn't look anything, neither of them look anything like Palpatine. So I'm assuming he just had a natural son at some point. And which, again, to me, I think made me think more or less that's truly his granddaughter. It's his blood. In this book too, we find out that Dathan at that point is what, 33 years old, I think, at some point, something like that.
I think he's 33, 32, 33, something like that.
So that means he was actually created, or I thought born. What was it? So this is 17 years. So
technically before A New Hope, right?
Oh yeah, it was before A New Hope, definitely. It was about 10 years, 10 or 11 years. It's like right around Obi-Wan, right around the time Obi-Wan started. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, that he was created. So Palpatine's been at this thing for a while, even before he was even dead. So again, that's a tidbit. That's a key element, I feel like.
To be fair, in some of the comics, we have pointed out him hinting at cloning, or me shoehorning him hinting at cloning.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, like that makes you go, holy crap. Because I think if any of us thought that he had a contingency plan in place, it wouldn't be that early. That's early.
Yes, very early. Yep. So I think that's, to me, that's probably the most, as we kind of talk about the impact. This we've said it, by far the most impactful novel, I feel like, that's come out in relation to the movies, especially episode 9. Mm-hmm. Just super impactful. I think if you at all want to make sense of what you saw in the sequel trilogy, this is the book to get into it.
If this brings any hope to you at all, within the first handful of chapters, we learn about the cult on Exegol.
Yes.
So that answers that question right there in the Rise of Skywalker, whether or not there are actually people in the stadium or not. So if it's that specific, you definitely need to read this book.
Yes, definitely. It's just a great read too, or a great listen. Again, you're like listening to a Star Wars movie, and Luke is, again, I feel like this is the Luke we wanted in a movie. You know what I mean?
Yes. 1,000,000%.
Yes. I think if the people would have saw this kind of Luke in the movie theater, they'd be like, yes.
Mark Hamill would have even been like, yes.
Totally. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure this is what he would have done. Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. So anyway, rating, are you giving this thing a 5?
4.75. I'm so hesitant of giving something a 5. So hesitant.
Yeah. I believe, I got to go back and listen to it, but I believe I gave Dark Disciple a 5.
I think you did.
Yeah. That is probably still my number one book as well.
Same.
Yeah. So I will give this a 4.75 as well. This is right behind that.
You normally do halves. I know. So that's big for you.
It is. Yeah, because I don't want to give it a 5 because that would make it as good as Dark Disciple. It's not as good, but it's right. It's 1A. I mean, It's right up there. So
Agreed.
all right. Thanks everybody for joining, watching, listening, all that stuff. Again, keep coming back to Inside the Force on YouTube, on our podcast feeds. Got a little bit, this is probably, I'm not sure when I'm putting this episode out, but we are going through a couple of different things, changes wise to our Patreons, but of course, thank you to our Patreons. And look for some more content coming. I know Hannah and I are going to work out getting some commentaries done, as well as some more book reviews and things like that. So, and at this point, I believe I probably will have our merch store kind of up and going a little bit. So yeah, so go to InsideTheForce.com. There's a little button there that says shop. Click on that. You can go see some t-shirts and stuff like that. I'll be updating that with some new and unique limited edition, limited time t-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, keep coming back for that. I'll keep talking about that on the shows. All right. Thanks, Hannah, as always.
Thank you, as always.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time. May the Force be with you.